usage and improve our usage of web intelligence, specifically through adding more interactive features. So if you think about your user base, you probably have some people who are just viewing reports, or like they're just a recipient of a report, plus you have some people who are actual developers of reports, but then you also have like a whole spectrum in between, sort of like analysts who maybe they're not developing reports as much, but they still need to be able to dig into the data. And so to that end, there's a lot of interactive functionality in web intelligence that will allow these users to take an existing report and use it for any number of purposes. Sort of drill into it, slice and dice the information, etc. So as I'm going through some of these interactive features, what I want you to do is just kind of like think about some of the more static reports that you have right now, and think about to what extent you can improve the quality and usage of those reports by making them more interactive. Okay, so I'm going to go into a demo on these features, but this is what I'm going to cover. So there's a lot that we can talk about in terms of interactive web intelligence, but this is what I'm going to focus on. So we're going to talk about input controls, what's called element linking, document links, external hyperlinks, and then we're also going to talk about comments. So almost all of this applies, I'm going to be showing this to you through the prism of 4.2. The demos that I'm going to show are in 4.2. But even if you're not on 4.2, most of this will still apply to you, even if you're on 4.1 or even 3.1. The only thing that's really exclusive to 4.2 is the comments feature. So we'll cover that at the end. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, cool. All right, so what I'm going to do is just show you a couple of, these are just sample reports. I'm going to show you a couple of these sample reports, and right now they're just basically in a kind of static format. And we're going to build on them by adding in some interactive features. So the first thing that we have is this summary report. These are reports that are pulling information from this fictitious airline called West Coast Air. And we've got this summary report here. It's showing us some statistics for our various destinations. How many flights did we have to each destination? What was the on-time departure rate? We have the on-time departure rates broken out here by month. We also have a map showing how the revenue breaks out by our various destinations. We can also see some statistics specifically for certain types of routes. So we can see how many flights we had on the Phoenix to Las Vegas route, for example. How many customers there were, what was the revenue, et cetera. And then we also have a breakdown of information about each of our pilots. So right now this is all static information. We really can't drill into it at this point. So we're just consuming the information. Maybe we take it out into Excel, but we don't have any vehicle through which we can slice and dice the information. Like, let's say that I wanted to look at this summary page, but specifically for a particular pilot, or specifically at a particular fare level, or something like that. So I don't have that capability right now. And so as a user, if I needed any of that information, I'd have to go back to the report developer and ask them to expand the report to include that, right? And so then that creates this whole like development loop, and I'm stuck in this and stuff like that. So it's a lot better if I can include various interactive features into this report, and then in that way, this report can serve multiple use cases, right? It always makes me cringe a little bit when I see people have like a report that says something like January revenue, and then they have another report called February revenue, when they could really just have like one revenue report with that interactive capability to change the month, right? Because nobody wants to manage that many reports. So let's talk about some ways to make this report more interactive. So the first thing that we'll talk about is what's called input controls. This is one of my favorite features of web intelligence. This is where you can have a set of dynamic filters on the left-hand side. Could be combo boxes, could be drop-downs, or check boxes, whatever it is. So here in web intelligence on the left-hand side, there's this little checkbox icon. You'll find that here in 4.2, but you'll also find it in 3.1. So if we open that up, I've already built a few input controls into this report. We'll build another one. I'll show you how that works. But basically what these input controls allow you to do is you can toggle those input controls in real time. So I'm looking at this summary report, and let's say that I want to filter this down so that I'm looking at just one departure city. Like let's say that I want to filter this down just for those flights that are departing from Phoenix. And so I take this existing report, I make that simple toggle on the left-hand side, and then now I have this completely new report. Okay, so it's very interactive. An end user, even if they're not very technical, can still interact with this. And so I was able to make that change to explore the data without having to go back to the developer and without having to take a copy of it and like change the structure, right? And so I can go through this. You can imagine that using these input controls, I could create any number of combinations of data. Okay. So I've got various input controls here, like for departure city, arrival city. I've got this neat little double slider for fare. And there's also a little calendar here where I can drill down to even a specific departure date. Now, if I wanted to create a new input control, it's pretty simple. So here's how it works. In the upper left-hand corner, there's this New button. I click New, and I'm now creating my own input control. It's going to ask me 3 questions. The first thing it's going to ask me is which field I want to use as my input control. So what I'm going to do is select pilot name. So I'm going to create a new input control where I can select a specific pilot. Okay? The next thing it's going to ask me is what type of input control I want. Okay, do I want like a drop-down box? Do I want a checkbox or whatever it is? So right now I'm going to choose combo box, which is just a drop-down. The last question it's going to ask me is to which part of the report should this input control be tied? So in other words, when I make a selection in this input control, what thing on the report should change as a result of that? Does that make sense? So you're setting up what's called the dependencies. Now, starting in 4.41 SP6, we got this option for entire document, which allows you to create this kind of like global input control, so that anytime you make a change in the input control, it'll affect the entire report, all tabs. But if you're using something prior to that, you could select a specific table to which the input control will be tied, or you can select the entire tab of the report. Okay. So for my purposes, I'm going to choose entire document and click Finish. And now you can see what I have is this fancy new input control where I can easily select a specific pilot, and I'll get all of the information for that specific pilot. Okay. So I can see now, for this specific pilot, where did they fly to, how many flights, how much revenue did they bring in, and what was their on-time departure rates. Okay.
Question for you.
Yes.
Yeah, is in that new feature for just covering all tabs, is to take that pilot name and put it on each of the tabs of the report?
Yeah, it does. So now if I go to a different tab, I still have the pilot name input control on the left-hand side.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's like...
It's very nice, yeah, because previously you would have had to create it on all 3
multiple
tabs.
times,
Yeah. Okay.
I got a question.
Yes.
Is it possible to cascade input controls, like take results from one input and apply it to the remaining inputs?
Yeah, every time I bring up input controls, somebody asks that question, and the answer is currently no, but according to the sort of like roadmap stuff that I've seen on Web Intelligence, that's apparently supposed to be one of the features that they're actively looking at introducing, hopefully sometime later in 4.2. Paul, I don't know if you've heard anything specific.
I've heard it's coming in a service plan, cascading prompts.
Yeah, so I hope so, because that'll be a really huge feature. Yeah, currently these are all of these input controls are distinct entities, and they're not tied to each other. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so input controls, great way to add an interactive functionality to your report. They're quick and easy to build, and they're easy for users to interact with. Okay. All right. So we've got our input controls. The next thing I'll look at is what's called element linking. This is where you can make one table or chart or some other element of the report control another element of the report. So I click some particular pilot in a table, and then my chart over here changes. Okay, so it's creating that kind of like almost sort of something that you might see in Excelsius or SAP dashboards. So here's how it works. Let's say on my Routes tab right here. On my Routes tab, I've got a table here that breaks out each one of my routes. And then at the bottom, I've got a chart that shows me month by month how many flights there were. Now, but this is grand total. This isn't showing me for a specific flight. So let's say I want to, again, make this report more interactive. I want to make it so when I click a particular route in the table, the chart automatically changes. That's called an element link. So I'll show you how that works. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click this top table. And I'm going to tell Web Intelligence to give me a new element link. Okay? And it's going to ask me a couple of questions. It's first going to say, okay, what is it that you want to be used as the trigger for this element link? And what I'm going to say is arrival city. So whenever I click a particular city, I want that to change the chart. Okay? It's going to give this next screen here is where I can add a particular description or change the name of this particular filter, but I'm just going to leave it as the default. Now this is important. This is the most important part of this element linking. This is the menu where you're going to be able to specify this other table or this other chart to which you want to tie the link to. Okay, so what I mean by that is that I am going to select my bar chart. Okay, so what I'm saying is anytime I click the table, I want it to change the contents of my bar chart. All right, and now I'm done. I've defined what I want to use as my trigger and this other dependent table or chart that I want to change. All right, and now I'm done. Now, this table is tied to this chart. So you'll see what happens when, let's say I click this Salt Lake City line item. The chart below is automatically going to change. When I click Seattle to Washington, or sorry, Seattle to Phoenix, the chart below changes. So you can see it's fully dynamic.
It's one or the total, right?
Exactly. Yeah, right. You can't select multiples. It's just one or the total. Now, one thing I've added in here for just for the sake of visual and clarity is that if you do select a particular city, you'll see it displays that in the header of the chart. Because if I print this report, I won't necessarily know which one I had selected. So that's always a handy thing. Yes?
How can you share with users who do not have a WebEye account?
They have to be able to log in. Yeah, so this is only if all of these interactive features are only the features that they can access if they actually are able to get in and run the Web Intelligence report. Yeah, if they're just getting the report like via email, they won't see these features. Yeah. Yes.
Can you make it bidirectional, so like, instead of just selecting a value on the table, the chart responds? Can you make it so that if you select the value on the chart, the table responds either or?
Yeah, you can. There's no limit to the number of different filters you can add. So you can also add an element link to the chart as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
I noticed that when you were doing a link, it said you could add it to the whole report as well.
Yes.
Would that also change the table up at the top if you
Yeah,
did that?
that's why I don't
Which
do
is
that.
kind of unfortunate because then you couldn't see the other stuff.
Right, yeah. So what I do is and rather than saying the whole report when I'm defining those dependencies, is I select just the specific chart or charts that I want to change. Okay.
How do you go back? So now that you've got it there by
Yeah.
that one, how do you go back to the normal?
Good question. So whenever you insert these element links, what's actually happening in the background is that it's just put an input control on the left-hand side. That's really what it's done, is it's created an input control, but it's an input control that you interact with within the report and not on the left-hand panel. Okay, so if I wanted to just go back and see the grand total or remove this element link, I open up my input controls, and then I find that I now have an element link. I have this like little input control that got created. And from here, I can either reset it, I can clear the filters, or I can just remove the link altogether. Okay. All right, so does that make sense? Okay, cool. So input controls, great way to have these kind of like on-demand filters on the left-hand side. Element links are a great way to introduce some interaction within the document itself so that you're actually like clicking on the data and seeing things change. Okay. So let's look at, the next thing I want to look at are document links. So document link is where you can click on one report and then have it drill into a separate report. So just as a little background, I'll show you that one of the reports that I have here in my inventory is a report called Pilot Flight Records. When I run this report, it's going to prompt me to select a specific pilot. Okay, I select that pilot, whichever pilot I'm interested in. Let's say Billie Jean, she's a wonderful pilot. Although I take that back. She's really been slacking.
I've been on vacation.
Okay, so here's this other pilot, and it's going to show me all of the individual detailed flight records. Okay, so just a real simple report. Now we can think about ways in which we can create this kind of like network of reports, so that we don't just have separate, distinct siloed reports, but maybe we create like this sort of networked reports that kind of encourage this sort of interaction and exploration of the data. So if we go now, here's back to this report. On my pilots tab, here's where I've got some good high-level information about each pilot. For each pilot, I know how many flights did they fly, how many passengers did they fly, what was the total amount of revenue that they generated, and what was their average on-time departure. So this is high-level information. I might want to drill into this to see the detail, to see each flight that each pilot flew. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, what I can do is I can add a document link to this table so that whenever I click a pilot, it's going to go straight into that pilot flight records report and open up the records just for that pilot. Okay, so here's how I do that. I'm going to right-click my pilot names, and I'm going to choose to insert a document link. Okay, so an element link, that's something different. What we're going to do now is a document link. And I'm going to select the report that I want to link to, which is my pilot flight records report. Okay? And now I'm going to get this screen right here. I know it's a little bit hard to see for the people in the back, but basically the bottom line with this screen is that you are defining the parameters that connect your main report to the linked report. And namely what we mean by that in this case is that when we open up this other detail report, we want it to run specifically for the pilot that we clicked on. So you'll remember that in that other report, the detail report, when I opened it, it asked me to select a pilot's name. That's because there's a prompt for pilot. And so that works perfectly with this document link structure. Because what it means is that I can automatically plug into that prompt a specific pilot. So there's this little document prompts section here. This document prompts section, it's going to show me every single prompt that exists in that detail report. And it's going to allow me to plug in values into that. So what I'm going to say is there's a prompt in the detail report. It's called select pilot. That's just the text of the prompt. It just says select pilot. And I'm going to fill that prompt with the field called pilot name. That's the name of the pilot that I click on. Okay, so now I'm done. I click OK. And now you can see that my table has hyperlinks now. Okay, so I've got this information about each pilot. I see that, for example, Tom Smith, he's flown on only 68 flights, but his on-time departure rate is well below the company average. So we might think, what's going on here? So we can, oh dear. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so what I can do is I can now have the option to click on any pilot. I click on them, and it'll open up the pilot flight records report, and I'll have the individual flight records for that particular pilot. Okay. For convenience, I've done some conditional formatting so that all of these flights that are in red, those are the flights that had delayed departures. So it'll help you in analyzing the information. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Does it identify or differentiate which fields have or don't allow you to click on a document versus an element?
Oh, there's really no, I don't really think there's any distinction. I think that you can, well, an element link is internal to that one report, whereas a document link allows you to connect more. But I think you can use any field as a parameter to pass between two reports. I don't think that there's any restriction to that. You can even use variables as a parameter to pass between reports.
But does it identify it to the user?
Oh, I see. No, not really. I mean, if we look back at this other report here, the document links actually appear as actual like web hyperlinks, whereas the document or the element links do not. The element links just look like regular things here, so it's a little bit different. So what I would do is, like, there's no iconography or anything on this. So what I would do is just add maybe some like instructions here in the subtitle that give the user some direction. Yes.
When you were in your detailed report and then your summary report, where you pick the pilot's name, does the format of how you put the pilot's name in both reports matter?
Yeah, they do have to be the same. What you pass as the parameter, whatever format that field in, has to match up with the format up here. Yeah. But as now I used pilot name because this is just a sample database and I don't have like a person ID, but you could use the pilot ID number as the connector, and then you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about format. Yes?
Does it allow you though to do like a select where it's similar?
Oh, that's a good question. No. Well, not necessarily. Potentially, you could probably actually do something like that. Yeah, actually, I think you probably could, because you could just pass. It'd be too long to go, but maybe we can connect, and I can just we can sort of think about how that would be. But yeah, you could potentially pass a parameter to the source report that doesn't actually filter anything, but then you use it for the source as like a report filter, not a query filter. But yeah, so I haven't tried that specifically, but I can see some ways in which that might be doable. Yeah. Yes.
So it doesn't have to be a prompt. It could be a filter, or it could be...
when you're setting up the hyperlink here, what it calls document prompts, those have to be actual query prompts.
Okay.
But so you do have to pass something, but the something that you pass could just be like a dummy value that doesn't technically filter the query, because you can have a query filter that says pilot name equals X or 1 equals 1, and then in which case it wouldn't do any filtering, and then you can use it downstream.
Use that, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. So there's some hack ways to do it, but the general way in which it's intended to be used is to pass parameters, and for those parameters to tie into the query of the source report. Yeah. Okay. All right. You also have the option to do some external hyperlinks as well. So, for example, you'll see here on my routes page, I've got a listing of my different routes, and I've got this column that says map. And so I can click on this link, and what this link actually is it's just a kind of like dynamic Google Maps link. So when I click on it, say I click on my Seattle to Phoenix route, I click on that, and it's going to pull up Google Maps with like that route shown on it. And so I can get some information. Maybe I could use this to see like competitor prices and stuff like that. Okay. So you can also build dynamic external hyperlinks as well. One last thing I want to mention before I run out of time is the commentary feature. So everything that you've seen so far, it will work just about the same in 4.1 and in 3.1. Okay. So the only thing that's completely new is the commentary feature. So now beginning in 4.2, there was introduced this comment feature in Web Intelligence where you can have comment threads embedded in the report. So if anyone was familiar with the discussion feature in the old like 3.1 version, I don't really think anyone used that, but this new commentary feature is kind of like, I think, a more improved version of that. And so now in 4.2, we now have a new button on the left-hand side with these little like squawk boxes on them. And that's where you can have commentary threads embedded in the report. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to add a new comment thread, on the top toolbar, I can click Report Elements, Comment, and I can click the button that says Insert Comment. Okay, so here's how that works. Let's say that I click Insert Comment, and I put the comment box down here at the bottom somewhere. It's going to initially ask me to put a starting comment to the thread. So I'll say something like, put your comments here. I click OK, and now I have a new comment thread. Okay, so you'll notice that whenever I click on that box, it's automatically going to open up the comment thread on the left-hand side. I can add more comments to it. Users can add more comments to it, so it can be fully interactive. So that's kind of like engaging the users in the report. So a couple things. Only as the report developer in modify mode can you create a new comment box. But once a comment box is created, people can add new comments to it just in like view mode. Okay. Also, you can edit a comment, but you can't delete it. So that's great. The other thing is you can have multiple comment boxes on the same report, but each comment box corresponds to a separate thread in the report. The other thing that we came up with that I think was sort of an interesting at the last AZBOCUG, I presented on new elements in 4.2, and I was talking about the comment feature. And Paul asked if you could put any kind of like icon on the comment, and I confidently said, no, you absolutely cannot. Paul's not being so silly. And then on the drive home, I realized, oh wait, you can just put a background image. So you can see here on the top, all of these different icons are actually just comments. So for example, I've got a comment thread here for change requests, or sorry, a change log. So this comment thread allows me to log each change I make to the report. And that's like one way that I can document the changes that have been made to a report and to share those changes with the user. I also have a little icon here for requests and other comments. That's what this comment is for. So people can click that and then add their own comments. This little light bulb is where people can add their strategy ideas. So somebody said, we can increase, and kind of goes along with that thread of adding interactive capability. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you as a report developer set that up. If your reports are only read-only, so users can only run the reports, they can't actually save anything,
Yeah.
will it still let you add comments to those reports?
They should still be able to add comments because the comments are not stored in the report per se, they're stored in the audit database. You can store them in a separate database if you want, but by default they're stored in the audit database. Yeah. And also I should point out that when you add a new comment, it doesn't require that you hit the save button.
Okay.
As soon as you add a new comment, it's just there, and you don't have to save the report. Yes.
Can you delete the comment?
You cannot, as the report developer, you can go back and just delete the whole comment thread, but as an individual user, you can't delete your comments. You can go back and like edit it to say like redacted or something, but that's about all you can do. Okay, so
That's what the report, the person in comments can edit their comment to redact
Yeah.
it, but they can't actually get rid of it.
they cannot get rid of it for some reason.
Now, if you get rid, okay, so one other thing, like, so you've got it here, they add some dumb comment that says something like, I hate this report, please change it. And they realize, oh crap, I shouldn't have said that because I was in a moment of too much emotion and I needed to back up. But that never happens to anybody, right?
Yeah.
And so then they come back
Just
and
tell
say, I
them
want
to
to
direct all those
delete
requests to
that.
the change log.
Yeah, exactly. Just put it in a change log. So they come back and they realize that they shouldn't have said it. Well, now you've got this comment in here that now has this dumb thing now that they've redacted their comment.
Yeah.
And you've got a whole bunch of people that have redacted comments.
Uh-huh.
If you delete the comment out as the report developer, just delete the whole thread.
Yeah, at least all that I can find from the perspective of the Web Intelligence interface here is that you can create a comment thread, you can delete an entire comment thread, and you can modify specific comments, but you can't do much more than that. Now, I think that it stands to reason that you could probably go into the audit database and delete that specific record, but I haven't tried that.
Adam, could I
Yeah.
modify it to blank?
Let's see.
That would be a way of deleting it.
Another
At
good
least
question.
from people reading it.
It says undefined, so perhaps even more. Perhaps even more
Yeah, I'd like to point out at IBIS in June, Gregory Botticello, who's the product manager for Webby out of France, was there. And one of the things he was talking about was you must understand that this is only a version 1 of the commentary feature. And they're very interested in getting feedback, and these are the kind of things that they want to hear about in terms of, okay, yes, I do want to have the ability to delete comments and so forth. He also said that with future service packs, they would allow commentary to be placed on individual components within the Webby report itself, so it doesn't have to be applied just at the report level. It could be, you know, individual pieces of the report as well. So there's a lot of exciting things I think that you'll see coming as well. And the first version is only for Webby, but they're going to expand it to other tools going forward as well.
Yeah. So just to wrap up real quick, I'll just kind of just to tie this all together. So we started with this static report where we just get some summary information, but then through these interactive features, we allowed the user to dynamically toggle various combinations of data with the input controls. We allowed them the capability to use an element link to dynamically change this chart here. So we kind of added some actual kind of like in-data interaction. We also connected 2 different reports so that we provided this kind of drill down capability. We see aggregate pilot statistics here. We click on one of the pilots. We drill down to their detailed records. And then also to engage users in the kind of like creative process around the report and to share documentation. We've included interactive comment threads in the report as well. Okay, so we kind of took like one static report and made it more interactive so that now this one report can be used for any combination, to answer sort of like any combination of questions. Okay. All right, any questions?
Excellent.
Thank you so much.